All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. Got quite a few people popping in over here on the Twitch side. Penguin Operator, you are first. Hello. Spiro, you are indeed second. Welcome. Luna Moon, good to see you as well. Apotham, welcome. Thank you guys very much for being here. All right. So before we jump into what we're going to discuss tonight, I do want to just take a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partner, Javier Lazaron, followed by our partners, Graboli's Inc., and Matt Oscard. Those are the highest tiers of subscription over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. Followed by the list of supporters you see here. Scrolling by the screen, they are also a combination of the other tiers of support over there on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for that support. It means a great deal to me and helps me cover the cost of running this channel, things like hosting fees, software licenses, eventually assets, things of that nature. So thank you all very much for that. Speaking of that, thank you also to all of you guys, the viewers, whether you're joining us live here on the YouTube side or the Twitch side, or if you're catching the VOD after the fact. Without you guys, this project and this channel would not exist. So thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Okay. Dingus Dev, good to see you as well. All right. So, I guess first thing before we jump into this, I do want to just sort of reiterate one thing that I talked about yesterday at length, but I'm going to be very quick about it here today. And that is that we have begun the process of moving away from Discord over onto the Kohi engine forum. So I've actually added some commands in the Twitch bot for that. Apotham, thank you very much for the tier 1 sub, 13 months. Thank you very much for that support. I greatly appreciate that. And so this is the forum here. Again, you can grab a link to this in chat by just typing !forum, and then I'll give you a link to that. We also do have an IRC server that has recently been spun up. We're still kind of figuring that out. That's a bit more of an experiment at this point, but there is also some information on the forum having to do with that. So with all of that out of the way, I think let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be discussing tonight. So I put in there loading and saving the terrain. So currently the way that this works is in our scene, whenever we load up the scene, we are doing a generate. Why is that? Generates. Let's see. There it is. So we have the HF terrain generate, and we're sort of just hard coding this right into the casing create. So what we really need to do is we need to do a little bit more work around getting this to use an asset instead of hard coding this stuff. And that's going to involve using the serializer that we wrote last night, as well as the file format that we sort of designed and wrote last night. And furthermore, defining what those assets should look like and defining some rules around those assets. So the way that I'm going to tackle this is we are going to have a terrain asset that gets created that is going to be the same name as the scene that it belongs to. So if we have a scene called zones_00, which is currently our test zone, then we will have a terrain called zone_00, probably underscore terrain. And then, dot something. We don't have an extension for it yet. And that is basically going to be the way that we're going to handle that. So if we get in a situation where we try to load up a scene and that asset exists with that naming scheme, then we'll go ahead and load that asset. If it doesn't exist, then what we're going to do is we'll have the ability to actually create one, because we may wind up with scenes that don't have terrains at all, and we may not always need them. So we don't necessarily want to make it a hard, fast requirement as it is here at the moment. We want them to be optional. However, with that, there should only ever be one of these height field terrains in a scene ever. So you can have one and only one. And again, it cannot be manipulated like a particular, an entity is the word I'm looking for. It cannot be scaled and rotated and moved. It is where it is. So I think as far as the scene goes, there's really only one field that I think we need. In fact, actually, I don't even know that we have to add anything to the scene config at all now that I think about it, because we could just handle the naming scheme on its own. The other bit that is going to get a little bit tricky about this, that we have to think about some, is in the asset manifest, we have obviously the zone assets in here, right? So we'd have an entry in here that looks something like this, where we'd have terrain, and then the path would actually be probably terrains, and then zone 00 terrain, and then what do we want to go for with I guess we could just say HFT. Yeah. I'm not huge on 4-letter extensions, but I guess we can go with that. Kohi height field terrain. So for now, the way that this is going to work is we have to actually add this to the asset manifest manually. In the future, we're going to be adding something to the editor that when we create this terrain, it's automatically going to create a resource with this name and add it to the manifest. But for now, that's a manual step. So we're just going to go ahead and add that in here. I'm also going to take this and put an entry in here for zone 01, because we are going to have a second zone to test with here in the near future. So essentially what we're going to wind up with then is the terrain will essentially be auto-loaded along with the zone that it belongs to, and it will be loaded by convention. Let's see. Let me catch up with chat. Pierto with the 10 stream streak. Awesome. How's it going? Appreciate that. Still says one more stream until 30 watch. I swear it said... I could have swore you told me yesterday, I'm gelling, that it was one more until 30 watched. But I don't know what the criteria for that is. That's very strange. Let's see. I do not understand this laptop I'm using. Arch Linux refuses to use my discrete GPU, yet the distros that are based on Arch work without any problems. That's very strange. Is it NVIDIA by chance? Is it one of those... what do they call it? Optimus, I think. Because those can get a little bit tricky. Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay. I guess it just had to take a second or something to catch up. Okay. Godunk. Hello, Guten Abend, Guten Morgen, Guten Tag. Okay, I actually understood more of that than I figured I would. I don't speak German, but I guess it would be morning there, right? Yeah, early morning. Welcome. From Lake, good to see you as well. Now working on your bitmap text rendering. Does it stay at images for text, or do you have genuine fonts and selectable text for the editor, for example? So when you say genuine fonts, do you mean like true type fonts? Because we do eventually support true type fonts. We call those system fonts instead. And they are loaded using font files. So if that's your question, yes, we do put that in there eventually. It's just bitmap fonts were a little bit easier to implement and easier to explain up front. Have the dual GPU where one is AMD and the other is NVIDIA? Wait, what? Usually one's Intel and one's NVIDIA. I don't think I've seen the AMD and NVIDIA combo before. That's weird. I would imagine the Linux drivers are just pooping at that. I would imagine. That's not going to work very well, but you never know, I guess. Okay, so we have the terrain loaded up there. So I guess when we go ahead and create the scene, let's see, do we actually have the name? We have the configuration here. And I think, do we actually store, I forget, do we store the name in string format or K string or K name? Or at all, actually. Don't we, I thought we had description and whatnot in here. Oh, here it is, name and description. Okay, so we store the string. Okay, that actually makes our life a little bit easier. So what we actually need is right next to this, we're going to have a K name, and we're going to call this HF terrain asset name. And actually, I'm going to put this down here next to the terrain itself. So when we load this up, what we're going to say is, let's see, after we have, actually we have the config here. Where does that get? Here it is, deserialize. Okay, so we have to do this after deserialize. So we can do scene HF terrain asset name equals kname format. And this is something I added off camera a couple weeks ago, I want to say. So instead of having to do a string format, which allocates text, or allocates an array of characters rather, and then you copy that to a kname, and then you have to free that string. Kname format just kind of wraps all of that up, so you don't have to do that anymore, and creates a kname straight away. So the format for this is going to be s_terrain, and we just need the name. And so now we can just say scene name. And so that is going to give us the terrain asset name that we can then use to load up the scene asset. And if that's not in the manifest, we'll get an error and all of that good stuff. But essentially what we can do is we can say k_assets HF terrain asset, and this will essentially be the asset system request HF terrain. And I'm actually wondering, so we do have request from package and request from package sync. I don't think we should use the synchronous version, although I suppose we could initially just for the simplicity's sake. I think I'm going to let it default to the game package. I think that's fine. So the state is going to be the engine systems get asset state, and then the name of the asset. Oh, you know what? I forgot. This doesn't take K names. So this actually does need to be a character array. Okay, guess I won't get to use that yet. All right, so I wanted to use the sync version of this, right? With a fix me, use async instead. But this will just kind of make it a little bit easier to track what's going on while we're still debugging it. So the name is going to be scene, or is it scene or is it out scene at this point? No, it's scene, HF terrain asset name. And then we actually don't need this listener and callback for now because we're using the synchronous version, which doesn't have those things. Okay. So we have the terrain asset. Now, The reason I'm doing the synchronous version here is because we don't have to set up a callback and deal with this sort of asynchronously. We can just do it here. And eventually we'll just take this logic and move it once we actually get the asynchronous version of it hooked up. But the load itself doesn't actually take very long, so I'm not too worried about it. It's actually going to be almost like a drop-in replacement for this. So if, let's see, if not terrain asset, why is my, oh, I'm recording, that's why. Terrain asset. Then what we're going to do is we are just going to generate a terrain for now so that we have something. And we're going to say to do remove this. Just so that we still load with a terrain, because until we actually save off a terrain, we're not going to have one. But we still actually need something to sort of base our save off of. So this is going to obviously error, throw errors that the asset doesn't exist. That's fine. And then from there, we can kind of just proceed. So the next thing that we're going to have to hook up is something to be able to save the terrain. And eventually we're going to want to remove this step too and just be able to actually add a terrain. But for now, I just want to get the saving working. Let's see. Have an integrated and NVIDIA discrete on my laptop. I have to use BIOS to force discrete 100%. AMD. Oh, that's annoying. I don't understand why they can't just make a GPU that has two different modes of running instead of having to have two completely separate GPUs, one that's power saving and one that isn't. I don't get it. IMGUI doesn't have a NVRHI background or backend, so should create one IMGUI implementation for NVRHI. My question is this a clean approach? So you're asking if you should just basically create a new backend for the NVRHI as opposed to the other ones that already exist? Don't they already support Vulkan and all that stuff, right? So I'm not sure what the gain would be there, because I think NVRHI just wraps the Vulkan API, doesn't it? Can't you still make like discrete Vulkan calls? I think I haven't used it to be completely clear. So if it already has a Vulkan backend, then I would think that you could make those two work together without having to do that. But I don't know for sure, because like I said, I haven't actually used that. Ivo, it's good to see you over there on the YouTube side. Hello. This refactoring today merged two functions into one because they were basically doing the same, and to make that work, I had to refactor a struct. Now half my code is broken. Yeah. Crank up the old refactor tractor. I'm very familiar with that struggle. Okay. So if we do have the terrain asset, then we actually need to process it. So one thing that I did off camera, by the way, that we kind of briefly discussed is, let me actually pull up the asset type. So I did add version to this because we are eventually going to be adding features to this. So I decided to version this just for, in case we have multiple versions that we need to support in the file format. So there's that. And then also HF terrain C. Also, there is a small change where I basically made all of the materials exist at the terrain level, and each one of these materials has those handles to a texture, so that we don't have all these handles to textures on every single chunk The chunk instead maintains material indices. So you index into each material for each material slot, of which we have 5 per chunk. And then that is what gives you these textures, which is what gets fed to the renderer. And that change already works. I've already confirmed that. But that's a heck of a lot more efficient and in terms of performance and storage memory. So there is that, which is actually going to help us with some of the work that we have to do around getting this to load from an asset, which is here. Let's see. Thank you guys for the follows. I appreciate that. Welcome. NVRHI supports both DirectX and Vulkan. Right, but what is... Like, IMGUI's got a backend, right? So I think it has a Vulkan backend already. So couldn't you just use that? And then the rest of your stuff uses NVRHI. I assume. Again, I haven't used NVRHI, so I don't know. Does your engine support raw GPU programming like OpenCL for custom rendering pipelines or No, it doesn't. Is it only intended for shaders? For now, yeah. Eventually we're going to have... Well, I mean, obviously we'll have compute. We don't actually do anything on compute yet, just because I haven't found the need. But that is coming shortly. But yeah, that's all we really do. I don't have like a shader programming language with... I mean, at one point we did have a render graph, but it was just adding so much complexity and over complication to the code and overhead that I removed it. You want flexibility to switch between DirectX and Vulkan. That shouldn't be too difficult, I wouldn't think, if you design it that way from the beginning. If you design it to be... The only thing you're going to have to worry about is you're going to have to maintain all of the things in your world. You're going to have to maintain the state of them without being reliant on what the renderer is doing. Which can be tricky, because you can completely switch contexts. So like the order that your textures are loaded, for example, if you don't index that correctly or organize your data correctly and completely split your front and back ends apart, you're going to have a lot of problems with that. So if you design it that way from the very beginning to do that, then it shouldn't be too hard. But in my case, I decided not to do that. Like when I go to put a DirectX backend in here, it's just going to require a client restart. It is what it is. I'm not really going to worry about it because it's not really that big of a deal. It's not something that users are going to be just doing constantly, switching back and forth, right? So I'm just not going to worry about it. Let's see. Compute shaders will be a must, but there first should be a scripting API to create games with Kohi. Yeah, no scripting language. I'm trying to avoid that like the plague. But yeah, I mean, eventually we are going to need compute for some stuff, but we're doing things the old school way first. All right, so let me think. So when we go to load up the terrain, we basically need to copy the steps that is done in HF terrain when we go to generate. What we really ought to do, I think this is going to make the most sense, is I'm actually just going to take a copy of this HF terrain generate, and we're going to keep that, but we're going to, alongside of it, have maybe like a load from asset, or create from asset, and instead of this, it's just going to have a const pointer to a k asset HF terrain asset. And so this is basically we're going to replace all of the sort of hard-coded stuff that we had in here with data out of the asset. So we can do, we want to assert that asset blocks, wait a minute, block count X, and asset block count Z are greater than 0. We probably should have some other assertions in there as well. But we'll do asset block count X here and Z there. And then, oh, it looks like we use this a few times. Ah, that's kind of annoying. Do I want to have to change all of that? Yeah, I think I'm just going to change all of them. That way there's a single source of truth. So assets block count X, and we'll change that to Z, and asset block count X. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to go through here and just do this really quickly for all of these. Except maybe that loop. I'll get confused on that one. So Z there and Z here. Just make sure. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so we're going to do asset block count Z, and we're going to do that for here and this one. And then this one is just going to be the same thing, but X. All right. Now, that is going to cover 90% of what we have to do. The other 10% is going to be setting up the materials, because we obviously had this. We had this sort of pre-configured or sort of hard-coded here, right? So instead of this needs to be T material count equals asset material count. And instead of doing all of this stuff, in fact, I'm actually just going to kill all of these except one. And we're going to iterate the materials. So for U8, I equals 0, I is less than, actually we'll just do T material count at this point. Plus I. Okay. And then we can do T materials sub I. And we can get the albedo texture, normal texture, and MRE texture. And the only thing I don't remember is we have assets, materials, sub I, and this is just a index, right? So that's an index into the string table. I forgot about that. So what we actually need is the binary string table get, and this is going to be in, oh, wait a minute. We don't save that in here, do we? Did I actually have... We just have the index here. Oh, material names. That's what it was. Right. Okay. That's what it was. I couldn't remember exactly where I landed on that last night. So this essentially replaces what we had hard-coded here. Right, so we do asset material names. Wait a minute. It should be material names sub I dot normal string. I almost messed that up. Sub I. And then this is going to be the same thing. So asset material names sub I, and then MRA string. So we do have to create K names for all of those, which is kind of lame and slow, but we only do it once. So I'm not really that worried about it. So the materials themselves will be set up that way. And then, let's see, was there anything else that I needed to do? Yes, when we generate the block, actually, this might actually already do it. Generate block. We need to set up the, yeah, we need to get rid of this hard coding. So we need to get the material indices from how are we going to do that? So we have generate chunk here. I feel like we should probably generate all the chunks in one section and then assign the materials in like a different pass. So I'm actually just going to comment this out for now. And what we'll do is after we've generated everything, then we'll loop through it one more time and go ahead and set up all of the materials there by index. Because otherwise, I'm going to have to add a whole bunch of parameters to like generate block and try to pass the asset through that way, and it's not always going to use the asset if it's being generated based off of the default generation. Not something I really want to do. So we also have to go through them and set all of the Y offsets as well. So I think it just kind of makes sense. Or does it? Or does it? Because I could have something that essentially calls generate block, which calls generate chunk without that stuff. And then have a second version of it that sort of wraps that and calls how do I want to do that? I definitely don't want to add more parameters here. But we're already looping through the vertices here. So it's kind of annoying to like have to do that again. I think we could just branch it, actually. So let's do this. We'll change this and we'll say K asset HF chunk, terrain chunk, and we'll say asset chunk there. And then we'll do kind of the same thing for block. So we'll do K asset terrain block, and we'll do asset block. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then what we can do is here we can just say asset block chunks sub index. Oops. Right, we can pass that down. And then to generate block, we can then pass the address of asset. Wait, is it? Oh, right, we wouldn't do that and generate. We would actually just pass null here. And that means since we can pass null, that here we can just do this. And then here, where we have asset chunk, we can just very simply say, let's see. Let's get rid of these hacks. And we'll say if we have asset chunk, then we're going to use that. Otherwise, we'll fall back to these sort of hard-coded things. Right, so in this case, we'll say v.position.y is equal to asset chunk. We don't have our vertices set here, do we? So this will help us with material indexes, but it's not exactly what I wanted. Terrain chunk. Wait, why is that one material indexed also? That should have multiple material indices. So that's actually not right either. That should be, there should be 5 of these. And didn't we have... I don't think we actually had a define set up for that. Let's just plug a 5 in there for now. We know it's going to be 5. All right. So what do we need the asset chunk for aside from setting the material stuff? Because now I'm thinking we could do this Y offset stuff at the very top. Where did that wind up actually sitting? Because I thought we had... I put those all in the base terrain, didn't I? I did. Okay. So actually the only thing we need out of here is actually nothing to do with this at all. It's actually more to do with this stuff down here. So let me take that and put this stuff back. And uncomment this. Right, so if we have the asset chunk, then we're going to just say chunk, I guess we could loop through these. So for u8 I equals 0, I is less than HF terrain chunk max materials plus I. And then we can say chunk material indices sub I equals asset. Where's it? Asset chunk material indices sub I. Right, so we use those from the asset if they exist. Otherwise, we just fall back on these hard-coded ones for now. Okay. So I guess that makes sense. I think the next thing that we need to do then is actually just go through and modify the vertices. So that's going to be here. That's terrain generate though. I don't really necessarily want to do that. I want to do that in create from asset. So when we get down here, we're going to say address of asset blocks index. And then once we do all of this processing, then we can actually go through and set the heights to the saved Y offsets. So this is literally going to be a for U32I equals 0, I is less than T vertex count plus I. And then we can do a T dot vertices sub I position Y is equal to asset vertices sub I Y offset. And then the other steps are relatively the same. So we do have some repeated code in here. I'll clean that up at some point. Deduplicate it as best as I can. But for right now, I'm just really interested in more getting this to work than anything else. So I think that might actually be all we need to do to load this from an asset. I think for now. So I'm actually just going to do a copy of this and do height field terrain H. And right after generates, we're going to put in a new line and we'll say KPI. And we don't have the kasset HF terrain here, so we're going to struct tag that and for declare it so that we don't have to include that here. So I'll just go here and do that. Okay. So now we have that, and we can call that from our scene when we actually do have the terrain asset. So we can do, let's see. We can do scene HF equals HF terrain create from asset. And all we have to do is pass it to terrain asset. Boom. So that's in place. So now when we have an asset, we should be able to load it from disk successfully. I'm actually going to take this out. We don't want to remove that per se. All right, so let me go ahead and catch up on chats. Diamond, good to see you. How's it going? I am doing well. I've been working on a terminal game engine. Mostly have a working Vampire Survivors clone called Terminal Survivors. I like the double entendre in the name. That's actually pretty awesome. I love it. That's really cool. Diamond, I don't know if you've seen, but we actually have forums now because we're kind of stepping away from Discord. So our central thing is the forums now. I would say you should toss up a post on the forums for that. I think that link should give you a link. I think if the bot is gonna do its thing. Let's see. What did I call it? Forums. I just set up a command for this, you dingus. Why are you not working? Let me see. Give me a second to investigate why that command is not working. Because it absolutely should be. I'm pretty sure that that's what I put in. Yeah, exclamation point forum. So I don't know why that's not working, but I guess I'll just drop the link straight in chat. I don't know why the bot is deciding not to work. It just does this sometimes. I'll drop it in both chats. But yeah, feel free to post about it there. We actually have a section for showcasing your stuff, and yours would be the first. Once I clean everything up, we'll post the GitHub link. Perfect. Awesome. Let's see. It's not an ad for anything. I'm just not even linking any library. I'm just showing an image. Yeah, no, that's fair. I pulled it up off screen and figured that out. Gumdrop Gaming Channel. How's it going? First time chatter. Welcome. What are we creating code for? So this is, I guess, there's the specifics and then there's the overall version of it, right? So we've created a game engine from scratch written in C, and we are extending that and adding a new terrain system that we can use in our game that we're using the engine for. So yeah, we're in tandem, we're creating a game and a game engine, or I should say an engine and a game on top of the engine. And then to that, we are implementing a height field terrain. So that's what we're coding at the moment. We actually have the terrain working, but we don't have the ability to load and save it. So specifically, that is what we're working on right now. Okay. Let's see. I too am in this episode. Awesome. Singy, good to see you over there on the YouTube side. How are you? We're talking about what we've done. I'm remastering Simpsons game from 2007. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, feel free to post about it in the forum. Because it won't get lost like it will here in the chat. So feel free to post about it there. Because at least there it'll be searchable. And people can actually find it. And that's what it's there for, right? There's a whole section here for Project Showcase. So literally just put it in there.
You dingus.
Cool, I'm a game dev myself, looking for fellow game devs to connect with and see what's going on. Well, welcome. You're in good company. Yeah, we do things here. Everything here, with the exception of a couple small things, is written from scratch. So we've created our own game engine. We've created our own tooling around that game engine. We're still creating a lot of it. In fact, I might be able to run this still without it crashing. Let's find out. It may or may not work. We'll see. So, yeah, see, it does this every once in a while. I've got a Heisenbug in here somewhere. And I think it's from the asynchronous loading of something. I just haven't quite figured out what it is. So, I've got the ability to, run this little character around and he collides with the terrain and all that good stuff. And I can jump and swing a weapon and, can fall off cliff edges and stuff like that. It kind of teleports at the moment because it slides down the hill so fast. But, we have lots of tweaking we need to do. But, this is something that, has been written relatively recently, right? So, and then we have, an editor here where we can actually step in and manipulate things. So I have the ability to paint on the terrain or modify its elevation and things like that. So we're constantly going to be, expanding this tool set. But what we don't have is we don't have the ability to save this. Like I can save changes I make to the scene. So if I take this tree, for example, and I move it up and save that, that'll be saved. But the terrain itself does not get saved at the moment. So we need a way to do that. Psycode, good to see you. How have you been? Let's see. Forum, what is this? 2005? I love it. Yeah, exactly. Right? Forums are freaking awesome, man. I think the direction of going into these walled gardens like Discord was a huge misstep. I think we need to go back. I think we need to go back to forums. Forums are great. They are publicly indexable, so you can search for them and find results on the internet. And you don't have to have a login even to, just read about it. You do obviously to post, right? But like just to find like help for something, it's all in there. LLMs are going to love the rise of forums. Yeah, probably. But yeah, I think people are getting kind of tired of the whole walled garden Discord thing. So I've been thinking about making that move for quite some time. And finally, this last kind of stunt that they're pulling just kind of solidified that choice for me. Anyway, I digress. So we have that. I guess that the next thing that we need to do is probably come up with a way to be able to save our terrain. And I think we should have a way to save our terrain separately from the scene. Maybe saving the scene also saves the terrain. But I think we should have a way to save the terrain without necessarily saving the scene, because they are separate assets, right? And our scene editor is kind of also our terrain editor. So I just think we should have a separate way of doing that. So I guess, let's see, we have a serialize for the scene. And let's see, where do we actually, I think that's just publicly deserialize entity. There's our serialization for an entity. Yeah, okay. So we do have kscene serialize, which is basically our form of saving, right? We serialize it to a string and then that gets written out to a file. And I hesitate to hook terrain saving into this serialize, right? Because that's like the definition of side effect, which we really don't want in this case. So I think the way to handle this is just a separate entry point where we can do, I'm thinking return type Boolean, because there are circumstances where this could fail. And we say kscene, let me think. How do I want to handle this? Because in order to save a terrain, we need to take the existing HF terrain, create an asset from it, and then tell the asset system it needs to write that out. Which, come to think of it, I don't think we actually have that entry point in that code either. So I guess we should probably do kscene HF terrain save, I think is what I'm going to go with. And this doesn't really need to modify anything, so we're going to go with a const pointer on that. I think that makes the most sense. So we'll go down here. Oops. And we're basically going to say that any sort of failure scenario, this is just going to return false. So obviously, actually, yeah. So obviously if we do something stupid, like not passing a scene, right, we'll return false. Also, if the scene HF, meaning the height field terrain, if that does not have vertices, then that means it's not loaded, right? There's no terrain. So there's nothing to save in that case. And so that would also return false, I think. We might want to return true on that one because it's not technically an error. I don't know. I'll put a note in here. To do return true as this isn't always an error, question mark. Otherwise, we should do the thing and return true. So essentially what we need to do is we need to do k-assets, height field terrain, and we're going to do, I guess we could just call this asset. And we shall do, so vertex count, that's easy. So that's going to be scene HF vertex count. Block count X is going to be easy. Block count Y, or block count Z rather, is going to be easy. What else? Materials, material count. That's another one. Easy. Anything else? I think that's it. Oh, we can also set version, I guess. And we'll just do, I don't know. Sure. Fine. Whatever. Doesn't really matter. At least it doesn't matter yet. So the next thing that we're going to have to do is, based off of these counts, we're going to have to allocate a little bit of memory, which is no big deal. We'll just have to remember to clean that up, right? So assets vertices equals kalloc type C-ray. And this is going to be the k-asset HF terrain vertex type, not vertex 3D, right? Because we don't have to store all of that information. So that's going to be vertex count. And then we'll essentially have to loop through all of the vertices. So U32I equals 0, I is less than asset vertex count plus I. And the only thing we need to keep out of it for now is assets vertices Y offset equals scene HF vertices. Whoops, that should be vertices. I almost did that again. Vertices sub I dot Y offset. And so this will be vertices sub I dot position dot Y. It's the only thing we're storing off there, right? And the next thing will obviously have to be the materials and blocks, I guess. Which actually we're going to have to do blocks and then chunks. That's probably the next thing that we should do, because that's going to define like what materials you use and all that other good stuff. And then, well, actually, I suppose, suppose we could do, oh, you know what? We didn't actually store anything for material names, did we? When we loaded this up, we didn't actually store that. And that's going to be the name of the texture that's used. We might be able to actually get that from the texture system, though. Let's see. Ben Chilling, how's it going? Welcome. Imagine B8 is for Boolean. Do you only use the 8-bit version? Yes, except for in a couple of places where the API requires a 32-bit version. Let's see. Simple Machines, I just checked, was hoping for good old V-Bulletin, but alas. Yeah, Simple Machines had pretty good reviews. Because I used PHP BB in the past for forums, and that is just, I wound up having like lots of spam with that one. So this one supposedly is pretty good about spam. So hopefully that remains to be the case. I did think about V-Bulletin, but I figured I'd try this one first. This sounds interesting how you're doing this. Would you be interested in showing this off at a gaming marathon next month? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I don't know. I don't really have much to show off at the moment, to be honest. Do you have a type for flags too, like fancy, visible, wide? Yeah, I mean, flags, I just kind of roll them as I need them. So, like, I'll do something like, let's see, I think I have an example in here somewhere. Or I thought I did. Oh, you know what? It's probably... Yeah, so flags I do like this, right? So I have an enumeration where I set each value of it to some bit shifted thing depending on where it is in that list. And then I have a type deft U32 or in some cases a U64 if there's enough flags that holds, you know, the bitwise combination of all these flags. And that's the way I just kind of do those. Hope that answers your question. Be online, hold on commercial. Wait, hold on commercial, man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have a whole lot to like visually show off yet, right? Like this definitely is not at the point where I would necessarily want to show it off yet. I don't know what I would show off. That's the issue. I mean, it runs, sure, but that makes sense, and you do and flag thingy to check for it. Oh, so I actually have, where is that? Defines, I think. I actually have a utility for that. Did I put it in defines? Yes. I have flag get and flag set. So it basically does exactly what you declared right there, but instead of typing that crap all over the place in the code base, I could just call this macro and it does it for me. So, you know, the flag get basically just returns essentially Boolean saying, here's the collection of flags or the integer that has all the flags in it. Check to see if this flag is there. Return appropriately. And then the flag set, you know, I just do the same thing. Here's the collection of flags. Here's the flag I want to set. And then do I want to set it to true or false? And then, you know, it ORs it or flips it. Basically, we're allowing people a certain amount of time to talk about and share their games, speedruns, and other content. And as a bonus, we're raising money for St. Jude. Again, I really don't have, like, even the game idea is not really solidified yet. So I don't really have... Let me think about it. Because I don't know what I would talk about is the thing. Other than, yeah, I have a whole bunch of this code that I'm kind of using to build things, but I don't really have anything to show you. What does the S mean and U64, U16S? Oh. It's literally plural. I'm just saying pack U64 using U32s. It probably should be lowercase, but I'm using Screaming Snake case for all of these things. Yeah, and Gumdrop, it's not that I'm not interested in doing it, it's just that I literally don't know what I would talk about. So I have to think about that for a bit. But I do appreciate the offer, for sure. Let me see. Wait a minute, let me back up here. Return true for what? If you return true for that, wouldn't it give you bugs when saving? Oh. You're talking about this? My thought here is basically the result of this is, did the save succeed or not? And my thought is, if I hook this into also saving the scene, but the scene doesn't actually have a terrain in it, which is a valid case, then I could still say, well, this operation succeeded, even though it didn't write anything, it still didn't necessarily fail because it didn't have a terrain to write. Is basically what I'm getting at with this. So I don't know that I'm going to go that way yet. I'm leaving it false for now, but I'm just thinking that that might be something I want to do. But yeah, this is going to just be like nothing else is going to be hooked to this. This is going to be hooked to something else. So nothing is going to, I just don't want to say like, oh, the whole scene failed to save because the terrain failed to save because it doesn't have one. You know what I mean? In fact, I'm just going to do that because that just logically makes more sense to me. Okay. Where was I at? Just put my insane web-based SNES game on there. People will turn heads. Awesome, Spiro. That's awesome. Show how far he had to go to render his 3D world. As it is right now, people's heads would explode. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe, right? I mean, so Illumina does have some extra crap in here. So, you know, that's... I don't know what it's counting as XML, though, is the thing. Like, the way that it tags some of these things, some of these files is really confusing to me. I have a feeling that, like, one of my file extensions that I'm using for assets is its tagging is that. Push D. Let me run this again here. So, yeah, I mean, if we look at the total number of lines of code there, it's a decent amount. Not that that's a complete, objective metric, but like it gives you an idea of how big the project is. Do you have a good reason for using i32 instead of S32 like Linux code? Not really. Just int versus uint is what I was thinking. I could have very easily just gone for signed instead and unsigned, which I know uint is unsigned int, but yeah, that's literally all it is. I just kind of made a decision and went with it. I don't really have a huge reason behind it. I mean, I suppose if it bothered you, you could just go in there and type def it, right? Maybe you should start over. Yeah, file new. Clearly, that's the entire issue with my code base, and I should just delete the entire thing and start over, and start only with S versus U types. I mean, you totally got me. Time to start over. All right. So I guess probably the next thing we should do is loop through all of the blocks. So we have, let's do a U32 block count equals, and we'll say asset block count X times asset block count Z. And we'll do for U32, I equals 0, I is less than block count plus I. And I guess we should probably do HF block equals the address of scene HF blocks sub I. And in that, we are going to want to, let's see, we're also going to want to get the K asset terrain block. So we'll say asset block. And that is going to be the address of asset blocks sub I, which we haven't actually set up that array yet. So we need to do that. So asset blocks equals karray, or klx type C array, rather. And that's going to be kasset hf terrain block. Whoops. And we have block count there. All right, so essentially we're just going to be transferring most of this data from one to the other. So we have asset block, and chunks is a fixed size array, so we don't have to worry about that. Really, it's just the splat map pixels and the size X and Y that we need. So let's do this first, and we'll do block. Let's see. Actually, I think we said that that was going to wind up being HF. Where was that? I thought we had like splat map resolution type deft. Did we not? Yeah, right here. Why wasn't it finding it? Autocomplete, you fail. You dongus. All right. So these things are known to us, but to keep the format flexible, we allow it to be, oops, that's Y for the splat map. We allow it to be fluid, right? So the next thing we need is asset block. Actually, if we're doing this, I think we can actually do splat map pixels equals asset block splat map pixels. Now, the only reason that we can do that, oh shoot, well, we can't exactly do that. We're gonna have to do a mem copy. Not a huge deal, I guess. So K copy memory. The size that we're going to want is going to be that. The destination is going to be that. And the source is going to be that. Right? Okay, so we just take a copy of those. Again, that's a fixed size array, so we don't really have to worry too much about that. And then, let's see, I think we needed just a couple of things out of each individual chunk. I think it was mainly in the material indices, if I remember correctly. So, I guess we'll need for U32, C equals 0. And get ready, guys. I am getting ready to use C++. I know. I said I wasn't going to use C++ on this stream. C only, but I'm about to use C++. So we have asset block. Let's see. We need... Actually, we know this is going to be 256. C++. There it is. I finally used C++ on stream. I know, unsub. Banned. Doing illegal things live in front of kids. I used C++. What have I done? Plus C or unsub, right? I mean...
What in the hell?
Yeah. We can go ahead and fix that, I guess, right? I suppose we should do that, right? All right. So for each one of these, I think the only thing we actually need to copy is the, let's see, so HF chunk is going to be equal to the address of block chunks sub I, or sub C rather, and then K asset terrain chunk asset chunk equals the address of asset block chunks sub C. So now we can do, I think it was asset chunk. I think the only thing, yeah, we only need the material indices. That's what I thought. So this is just going to be a U8, I guess we'll say M equals 0. M is less than HF terrain chunk max materials plus M. And we can do asset chunk material indices sub M equals asset block, or actually, wait, no, chunk material indices sub M. Now, I could just do a memo copy on this too, but I suspect I'm going to eventually have more data to copy over here, so I'm not going to do that yet. All right, so we take a copy of that. That is all the way down to the individual chunk. So what is, I think there's only one more thing left, and I think that's the materials. Yes, okay. And this material names, I think, might actually wind up being an issue, but we'll see. Okay, so the next thing we have is for U32I equals 0, I is less than, and I guess we'll just do scene HF material count plus M. And we're also going to have to say asset material count. Actually, did we already? No, we already did that. It's just materials we need to set up. So that's going to be a kalloc C array. Type is going to be k asset HF terrain material and asset material count. And, oh, I said M here, and that should be I. So, asset materials sub I, MRA string index. Oh, this is right. Okay, I don't do this part here. This happens during the serialization. So I actually don't want this. I want material names. Right, so we want that, and then I have to set up the albedo string, which I don't think. It's just the K texture. So do we have, the next question is going to be texture system, or actually texture name. Let me see if I have anything to actually retrieve the name. I don't remember. I don't think we do. Interestingly enough, when we create the texture, I don't think we actually have a way to retrieve the name from. Oh wait, yes we do. Texture name get. There it is right there. All right, so texture name get. That's going to give us a K name, which we then need to say K name string get to that, and that will give us our string. So this, instead of materials, this actually needs to be material names. This needs to be, is that a, What was the type of that? HF terrain material names. Okay. HF terrain material names. There we go. Okay, so we just copy pasted that twice, so that's going to be normal string and MRA string, and normal texture and MRA texture. Okay, and that should actually give us everything that we need to do to go ahead and serialize this down to an asset. Or serialize it rather out to a file. So kasset HF terrain serialize will pass through the address of asset. I have exporter type and exporter version in here, and I don't actually need that. That's a carryover from the model exporter. I forgot to remove that. So we'll say U64 asset size, and we'll pass the address of asset size here, and we'll do void pointer data is equal to that. Let me fix this really quickly because we don't actually need the exporter type or exporter version for this. This is not a model. We don't have exporters. So get rid of that. They weren't being used anyways. Just forgot to remove them. Okay, so we can get rid of that. Okay, so now that we have that, now we need to say asset system. Who do we not have? No way we don't have the ability to write a binary. No way. Really? Well, isn't that a bunch of rubbish? Okay. So we want to write binary. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say U64 size, and void pointer data. In fact, that could be const void pointer data. Let's take this and go here. And then we can actually take from this, and we'll just write directly to the VFS. So we're going to do VFS write binary, which I knew that existed, and I think that does actually require a size and data. Yeah. So size data. I'm surprised we haven't actually had anything. I guess we haven't had to write an asset directly like that before. Binary. Okay. So this is going to be engine systems gets asset states, the package name. Do we actually have... We don't have the package name in here, do we? Crap. Okay. I'm going to do kname, or invalid kname rather, for now. And then asset name is going to be kname create scene HF train asset name. And then the content, instead of that, actually we want asset size and data. And then that returns a Boolean, so we can just return the result of that. And in theory, when we call HF terrain save, it should write that out to disk. Whether we've hooked everything else up correctly or not, I don't know. Let's see. Have you used I-128 in this project? No. Haven't had a need. Imagine not writing binary, right? I mean, you can either write binary or not write binary. That in and of itself is binary. How's it going, by the way, Orshi? Good to see you. All right. I guess the only other thing here to hook up is actually just a call to HF's terrain save. And that, I guess we could put, let's see, I did already add it to the header file. So I guess the next thing to do would be to hook this up to the editor. Let me build this real quick. See if I bungled anything. Doesn't appear so, or at least it built. We'll see. It's going, just chilling. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Can't complain. Just chilling here as well. Writing some things. Okay, so eventually we want to make it so that if we hit this save button, it also triggers this. But I don't necessarily want to do that right now. I'd much rather have the ability to save this separately. So I guess what I could do, we need a couple things in our terrain editor, right? Because this terrain editor at the moment assumes that we have a terrain, which we might not always have. And so we probably need like a way to enable and disable that, but also we need a way to create a terrain in a scene that doesn't currently have one. And then we also need a way to save said terrain. So my first thought, like for saving, was like I could just put a button up here, right? That seems kind of shitty, but I could do that. But the more I think about it, when we go to create a terrain, we're going to have to know a few different things. We're going to have to know how many blocks we want to create in each dimension. So we'll need 2 text boxes for that. We'll need a button to actually kick off the creation. We may need other properties as well. So I feel like that's going to be like a lot of additional controls in addition to what we have here. So I'm just trying to think about how to structure this. I guess what I can do, I guess I could just do the save button for now and then move stuff around later once we figure it out. I guess that's what I'll do. So I think I'll just put it to the right of the height field terrain editor text label thing there. And I'll just make a button that looks exactly like these guys, and I'll just have save over there. Let's get that working first, and then we'll program all the edge cases around it. So let's go to editor. Actually, yeah, let's go to editor over here. And come think of it, I think I am actually going to have to add, a new control. We may have to write some UI config sometime soon to actually like move all this crap to a file so it's configurable and we don't have to do this. Because it's kind of lame. Not gonna lie. Not a huge fan of having to write this much code for UI just to stand it up. But I digress. Let's take this. I'm just going to copy pasta this one and go down to the HF terrain panel. And I'm going to put this right now just next to the window label. So we're going to do terrain save button, and I'm going to say hack. This should have its own space alongside creation tools. Create button X, Z dimension, etc. All right. So we do need a new control added here. So I'm actually just going to copy pasta this and come down here to this, and I'm going to put it right next to title. And I'm going to call this HF terrain save button. And so we're going to call this HF terrain save button. And I just have to add that and replace that there as well. We're going to call this save. I'm just going to actually say save HF terrain. That's probably too large for how large the button's going to be, but I guess we could set the width to like 150. And then for the position, I want it to be at the same relative height as the window label. So I'm actually just going to go with 0 for the Y. And then let's go with like 300 for X. And then we do need a click handler. So I think I'm going to take this and go with a, let's see, do we actually have, no. Put it here. And I'm going to call this HFT save button clicked. And we'll go down to this section here, and I'm just going to paste in and create the definition. And then I want to come actually back up to this because I want to copy pasta some stuff out of here so I don't have to retype it. That's actually a bad example. Let me use this. Okay. So the editor is going to be the user data there. Did I actually set that up correctly though? User data is the state. Okay, good. All right, so we retrieve the editor state from the user data of the control, and then we can do a kscene kscene HF terrain save, and to that we pass editor edit scene. And for the event, we are actually going to return false. Okay, and then I guess what we could do is we could do a B8 result here, and then do a ktrace HF terrain save, and then we can say I guess we can do result success failure. Okay. Let us see. Let's see how bad we've bungled this. I highly, highly doubt this is going to work on the first shot. But let's try it. So I'm actually going to do an edit here first. And, oh crap, where's my button? Oh, it's over here. All right, well, oh, I know why, because I parented it to the wrong thing. All right, well, it should still work. Okay. Oh, I didn't hook up the dang event right. I knew I was missing something. Knew it. I forgot to actually do HF terrain save. Wait a minute. Save button clicked? Is that what I actually called it? This one. Yeah, okay. And then it was also parented to the wrong thing. This should be parented to the HF terrain BG panel. And I typed alongside instead of alongside there. All right. All right, so again, I will make a change here and save. And it pooped itself. Cool. Why? Let's see. Segfault, string table. Okay. So, did we not stand up the string table correctly? No, I think we did. What is it segfaulting on? Oh. Asset materials. Oh, right. I did need to actually set that up, and I didn't in the... Okay. That was actually just a stupid mistake. All right. That is right here. I did the material names. I didn't do materials. I should have left that one in. And that's just the same as this in terms of size. Okay. So, again. Why would you write binary? Yeah, exactly right. Do you use functions that return void as a generic that you can then cast without using some kind of tag like malloc? Yeah, pretty much. Seems like you actually use an out pointer for your void functions. It depends on what I'm doing. For my serialize functions, where I serialize to a block of memory, I tend to return that block of memory. Versus deserialization, where I don't necessarily always do that. It really depends on what I'm dealing with. And I wouldn't say it's something that I consistently do the same everywhere. Sometimes I do change it up, but... All right, so let's save this. Okay, so we have an assertion failure. Not that I'm very surprised to see that. Let's see. So, oh. So I can't get away with doing this because I didn't pass a package name. Okay, so that gets a little bit annoying because I don't remember if I have a way to get a generic package name. But I was passing invalid K name here. I don't know that I can actually do that. Engine. I think default package name. I've got some places I'm doing this in code. I just don't remember if I actually had something that was like statically accessible. So the VFS has something. Well, wait a minute though. If the VFS has a default package name, then I technically don't need to assert that here. Because I think if I were to go into write binary, in fact, yeah, this actually has something to... Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, that's actually something I should fix. So... Because the idea is whenever I provide nothing for a package name, I want to use the default package name, which is defined by the application. So I want to get rid of that. But then also, in the VFS itself, if this is invalid kname, instead of throwing an error, I want to use package name equals state. Wait, I thought I had. Did I not just see that? That's in the asset system. Oh. Okay, well, I guess I could just do it there then. All right, so this was fine then. The actual issue is with the asset system. So I could do package name equals invalid kname state default package name, otherwise package name. I was gonna say, I knew I had the logic in there somewhere. I don't know why that does that every once in a while. I've really got to figure that out. That's a really annoying Heisenberg bug. I'm gonna have to look into that thoroughly. Okay, so we will paint a little bit and then save. All right, why did it fail to write asset? Attempted to write to an asset that is not in the manifest. Okay, so what? We did put that in the manifest, did we not? Down here. Zone 00 terrain. So, all right, what all is it trying to... Actually, let me just take this. I'm going to put a breakpoint here. And we'll try it again. And I want to see what it's actually trying to write out. So the name... Actually, let me look at the package first. What package did it actually choose? So the name here, go here to kname string gets Shadows of Illumina. Okay, so pick the right package. And then name. Oh. That would be why. Okay. Because in the actual zone, zone 00, that is what the name is. Okay. So that's not necessarily going to help me when I go to actually set this up. So, okay. I'm not going to be able to do anything here, so I might as well just close this. Okay. I think the way that I'm going to have to fix this is probably when we go to when we go to stand up the scene. Let me think about this for a second. When we go to stand up the scene, when we do k-scene create, we are not taking in any sort of asset information with that. So I think that's actually what we're going to have to do. I guess let me do... How many places are we actually calling this? So those are the actual definitions themselves. So once in the editor, so scene asset content. Okay, so we have the asset name there. We have the asset name there. And we have the asset name there. And there. Okay, so we could very easily just pass that through. And one other thing. So we have the scene asset. Oh. That doesn't actually contain what I need. Although this does. Do we have... Yeah, we have it there. I think we might still actually... I think we might be okay. I think we might actually have the context we need everywhere. So the question is, do we want to use a k-name for this, or do we want to just use a string? I think we ought to use the k-name because we have the k-names available everywhere. All right, so editor, well, not editor, open. K-scene creates. Whenever we do this, we're going to do k-name scene asset name first. Which kind of sucks because maybe we don't always have an asset name, but it is what it is. So we go to do this. We have to do a k-name k-scene asset name. And then we actually need to go to the k-scene itself, and we're going to do a k-name scene asset name. We can then store that off right here. It's fine. Scene asset name equals scene asset name. And then when we go to set up this, instead of using scene name, we're going to use scene asset name. And instead of using this, we're going to use our custom K for k-name. And the address of, scene asset name. There we go. Because that takes in k-names directly. Okay, so we have that. That means that we're going to have busted sections in our code, but that's not going to be difficult to fix. So we'll do editor first. So this is going to use, let's see, scene name. And then the next one's going to be in the test bed. Got to fix that. So this is going to be the, see, where's the asset? Oh, I think that's literally just going to be kname create test scene. Oops. What did I miss? Testbed main, too few arguments. Oh, there's another one. Okay. This is gonna be the same thing. So kname create test scene. All right, and I think there's one more, which is gonna be for the zone system. And so this is going to be kname string get. Okay, so z scene name. Okay. I think that's it. Debating on if I should download website documentation with curl or wget. I feel like I've gone back and forth on this so many times, but I usually just default to curl, I think. All right, so paint this, save. Okay, save success. So this says. So let's check our assets, right? So we have terrains. There it is. Okay, and it is binary, so I'm not going to bother opening it here. But let me actually kill this now and launch this and load. Well, okay. That, I think, is my Heisenberg bug. Maybe not. Okay. Attempting to load. Wow, okay. It must be reading something wrong in terms of size. So I'm guessing we've probably just not binary string table from block. Oh, I was wondering if this was going to be a problem. I think it's just the offset of the binary string table that's wrong. D-array reserve. Yeah, because look at the entry count. Yeah, that's completely freaking wrong. Okay. So however we wrote the binary string table out, I don't think we're either reading it in wrong or we wrote it out wrong. Not zone system. HF terrain serializer. Okay, so here's where this is where we read it in. I'm actually going to look at the right first. So we do the serialization here of the table. And then we do the total block sizes plus the string table size. And then we write it finally down here. Okay. So I'm thinking this is probably like an offset issue somewhere. Let's see. So we write the blocks. Then we write the vertices. Then we write the materials. Then we write the string table. Okay, I don't see anything that looks inherently wrong there. Let me see if I can see any of the data that comes before this. So out asset. Okay, version 1, block counts. The block counts are correct. The vertex count, I think, is actually correct. The material count's correct. So it seems to actually just be oh, no, yeah, these indices are wrong for the strings. But I'm actually thinking like all the data above that is actually looks correct. I'm just going to spot check a couple of them, but yeah, I think we're... Yeah. Yeah, okay, so all of those look fine. So I literally think it's just the strings table actually messing up somehow. And the question is, how and why? How and why? Did we... It's going to be like a copy pasta error. I can almost guarantee it. In fact, I'm actually going to open this up again over here. On this side so that I can look at the output versus the input. So we have 3 U16s. And then we have the size of the blocks. Next. Yep. Then we have the vertex count next. There it is. And then we have the vertices themselves, which is here. And that actually looked to be correct. Material count is next. That's just a U8. Yep, that looks correct. And the materials themselves looks correct. And then we do, then we go ahead and reread the binary string table next. And here, I believe, we set up all of the string indexes, which is actually part of this guy. Then we serialize the binary string table. Okay. So we're adding these as we go. Just looking to see if there's anything in here that sticks out, but I don't think there is. Let me see. wget is friend. 2.8 gigs, yeah, exactly. By the way, I wrote an arena allocator this week with 2 modes. One is arena pool that any function can request for temporary stack space, which is, oh, that's pretty sweet. Fixed size and can be chained and returned back to the pool. The other mode is it reserves like 16 gigs of virtual address space, commits pages as you ask for more. You can then reset it, and it will retain the pages. Nice for bounded arenas, but you don't want to commit everything up front. That is pretty nice. I'm liking this for pretty much everything I do now. Yeah, and I may make some of those improvements under the hood to my arenas as well at some point. But like one of my design philosophies was I wanted all that stuff to be completely abstracted from the rest of the engine. So like when you call kallocate with a tag, that's the most that you should have to think about as far as that's concerned, at least the way that I'm doing it. That's what I did. Worst case scenario, I'll just write a little bot to collect URLs under the root subdomain and curl each of them. These are manageable for now. Fair enough. All right. Unfortunately, we're like 90% there, but I am 100% out of time for the night. So that's going to be that. I do have to end because I do have work early in the morning. So what I will do is we'll find somebody to raid. And while I do that, I do want to just give a big thank you to you guys for joining me here tonight and interacting and all that good stuff. Much appreciated. And if you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate a follow and or a subscribe on the YouTube/Twitch side, or both if you're so inclined. And then if you haven't already, I'd appreciate you checking out the forums and whatnot. And I see who we're going to raid. We're going to raid El's Dragoon, because these guys are Giga Chads making an NES game in 6502 assembly. So we're gonna go raid them before they raid me, and I will catch you guys in the next one. See you guys.